Now we queer up the big interview. David versus Goliath, as DeSantis aims $1.5 million to defeat Don't Say Gay queer Florida representative. Exit poll data here in Florida shows that when it comes to early voting, Democrats just aren't showing up. As the political machine of the GOP continues to out-fundraise Democratic candidates, is Florida destined to become a fully red state in next week's election? Queer News Tonight anchor Al Ferguson recently sat down with openly gay state representative Carlos Guillermo Smith to discuss what we have to face here in Florida.
Well, we're so happy to have with us tonight Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith, representing in the State House in the Orlando region. Carlos, welcome to Queer News Tonight.
Thank you for having me, Al. It's good to be back.
Anything important going on? It's kind of a fall vacation for you.
Just an election.
Yeah,
just an election.
Yeah.
Just a battle for the soul of Central Florida here in Orlando. Nothing much.
That's exactly the right term. Let's dive right into it. I follow your voice and your race. We've reported extensively on you about what happened in terms of the gerrymandering of your district, you being a +9 person 2 years ago, and now it's just basically 51-49, depending on which poll or who you talk to in terms of the voter makeup profile of your district. How's it going for you? Let's start there. Tell us about how is Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith today?
Well, we're 6 days out from the election, and we're standing strong, really, on the fundamental values that we have advocated and stood for the 6 years that I've been in public service, making sure that we protect our freedoms, treating every person with dignity and respect, including LGBTQ people who are under attack right now in the state of Florida, making sure that we use our voice and our seat at the table to try to help people's lives, especially the most vulnerable. That's what we've always stood for, and that's what we're fighting for. It's why in this re-election campaign, which is the toughest race that I've ever run in the state house, we have received close to 2,000 unique contributions from people across the state and also even from outside of the state, folks that really care about our message, who support our authentic work in the Florida legislature to put people over politics. And it's really inspiring to see so many people who have reached out in support of this campaign, especially knowing that I have a target on my back, Al, because Republicans are spending over $1 million to try to unseat me, which for context is a lot for a state house race. I'm not running for Congress here. Seeing these types of big numbers being spent to try to remove one of the only LGBTQ voices on the front lines in Tallahassee kind of makes you wonder, what is it about my reelection that Republicans and the DeSantis machine are so afraid of?
Carlos, let's dive right in on that. One of the interesting things for viewers that might not know, if you're LGBT, my goodness, I would hope you would know at this point, Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith is the tip of the spear in 2022 to stand up to the legislation that took place in the opening session in 22 in Tallahassee. Don't Say Gay, the woke bill, on and on and on and on. The DeSantis machine that was created, and Carlos, along with Michelle Rayner and Chev Jones, is our three from the LGBT Equality Caucus. You seem to be the one that has drawn the most ire from the governor, the redistricting of your seat, and the amount of money that is being spent. We're going to report tonight on Queer News Tonight that an average House race in Florida spends about $180,000 approximately, average seat. The GOP and radicals, the PACs, etc., that are spending money on you, just in these last days of the campaign, have a new $330,000 television buy against you between now and Election Day, and more than $1 million spent to have you removed from this House seat. First off, let's just talk about the money and where you were 2 years ago, +9 in your seat, and the governor, the governor's mansion makes decisions to modify, gerrymander the district, move Seminole County, a portion of Seminole County into your Orange County district. What's your reaction to the bullseye, literally, that's been drawn on your back? How do you react to something like this?
Well, I mean, look, having this bullseye on this seat, me in particular, spending over $1 million to try to unseat me in the Florida legislature, I'd be flattered if I wasn't so concerned that folks will be without a very important and very strong voice in Tallahassee if they succeed in trying to buy this seat. To your point, we have been the tip of the spear in Tallahassee for 6 years that I've been in the Florida House of Representatives on so many issues, not just LGBTQ equality, but also on gun safety reforms. The first bill that I passed, or the first bill rather that I filed when I was a freshman lawmaker after I was elected in 2016 was a bill to restrict military-style assault weapons and large-capacity magazines. I became a national leader on gun safety reforms after the horrific tragedy at Pulse that took 49 mostly LGBTQ people of color at Pulse nightclub here in Orlando. We have held this administration accountable in a number of ways, not just by being there to fight back against their extreme agenda against LGBTQ people, against women, against immigrants, but also even during COVID-19, as the governor sought to conceal and make secret public health records that would really reveal the true extent of the pandemic. I sued him in a public records lawsuit, and I was joined by the Washington Post, the New York Times, and a number of other national organizations to try to compel this administration to just be transparent and also follow our sunshine laws, which, by the way, it's a constitutional right Floridians have to public records and public information. That lawsuit is still ongoing. So there's just a broad spectrum of issues that I'm consistently holding this administration and the Republican majority accountable for that make me a force to be reckoned with. So at this point, Al, I don't blame them for wanting to unseat me, but it's not going to be something that's easy to do. We have people power. We have an army of volunteers and supporters who have our backs and who are out there with us in the trenches. So this is going to be a really close race.
Carlos, I hear you loud and clear in terms of your district and the importance of your representation, but I follow up from the personal standpoint. In terms of what you're going through here, the ramifications of how you've stood up for community, especially the LGBTQ community, and especially LGBTQ students in the state of Florida. How are you reacting personally to these issues and the attacks and the words that are being said and the television ads that are just, I don't think I've ever really quite seen anything like it. How are you personally reacting to it?
Well, thank you for asking me that question, Al. You know, it's interesting. It's an interesting feeling when you open up your mailbox and you find a piece of attack mail that is lying about your record of public service, that has your photo stretched out on a big piece of mail to make you look as horrible and as sinister as possible. You know, the attacks in politics, you have to have thick skin for. But I'll tell you, as someone who has survived anti-LGBTQ hate violence, seeing negative mail and seeing negative TV, you know, this is something that it's not great to see, but it's something that makes me stronger, especially full well knowing that really being someone who needs to stand against this type of hate and stand up to the bigotry, stand up to the transphobia and homophobia, I know that it can be a lot worse. And so it's a sacrifice that I think is worth making in order to make sure that our community has authentic representation in Tallahassee.
I hear you loud and clear, and in addition to hearing your words, I'm hearing Gloria Gaynor in my mind as she's singing that famous anthem song in our community. One of the other things that's really fascinating to me about your race is you've garnered so much attention from outside of your district. You've garnered, I'm sitting here in South Florida, and South Florida is following your race. The LGBTQ community certainly is following your race, and people, lots and lots of people all over the country are following what's happening in the story that is developing of this David and Goliath kind of thing between you and Governor DeSantis. How does that make you feel that so many people all over the state and around the country are beginning to take note of Carlos Guillermo Smith and what you're doing to stand up to this unbelievable bully?
Well, I think it is certainly a testament to the power of representation, a testament to the fact that it's really, really important that in Florida, which is really the front lines of this political fight, that we are pushing back against this extreme movement led in many ways by our own governor, Ron DeSantis, to marginalize trans people, to marginalize LGBTQ people, to pass the Don't Say Gay law and make that a national thing. The fact that we have only 3 openly LGBTQ representatives in the Florida legislature that are on the front lines against this fight means that it's really important that in this election that the other side doesn't get to send a message, a negative message to LGBTQ young people, which is that if you are queer, whether you are a student, whether you are going to work every day, or if you're an elected representative, if you speak out, there will be consequences and you will be punished. That is not the message that we want our LGBTQ and our queer youth to receive, which is why we're fighting so hard to make sure that we get reelected and we don't give the Republican Party and the DeSantis machine that satisfaction, because it's so critical that we really go back to Tallahassee and continue to be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah. So with that said, and the recognition that you're getting inside your district and your changed gerrymandered district and around Florida and around the country, what would you ask people to do for you? 6 days to the midterm election day, what do you want us to do? What do you want broadly community to do for you?
Well, so far, I would just say thank you, and I'm grateful for all the support we've received already. But you can also, of course, donate to our campaign to help us make sure that we can continue to fight back against these false attacks. But really, I need sweat equity at this point. Sweat equity being the folks who are actually putting in the volunteer work to make sure that we get out our Democratic and no party voters who support me in this campaign. That can be through a phone bank, through a virtual text bank. We have people that are joining us even this afternoon from way outside of Central Florida and even outside the state of Florida to text voters in the district that I represent to ask them and encourage them to get out and vote for me. Folks can do that by visiting carlosguillermosmith.com and finding out about our volunteer events, or just donate to help us expand these efforts right now. Yeah,
and are you looking for campaign contributions now, or because we're at the 11th hour, that's not an issue?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thursday at midnight is the last day that we are able to accept campaign contributions.
Just anytime before making that. Sure. And if somebody is going to contribute to the David versus Goliath campaign, how do they go about doing that?
That's carlosguillermosmith.com. Thank you.
All right. Well, you're a fascinating race, in certainly in Florida. You're one of the most interesting races that is going on in Florida, not only because of your role of what you did for LGBT in 2022 in this session. You know, one last question that I do want to ask you, Carlos. When you started the year, you went through New Year's Eve and January 1 comes up. Did you have any vision? Did you see this coming, that 2022 was going to turn in Florida on the LGBTQ community and you in the way that it has turned? Did you see, did your crystal ball foresee this?
You know, I saw the anti-LGBTQ bent that the DeSantis administration was taking really during COVID-19. Governor DeSantis took a hard right turn during COVID. He saw an opportunity to capitalize on the MAGA movement that got Trump elected to office, and he saw an opportunity to anoint himself as the heir apparent. And he knew that one of the ways that he could do that was to really make LGBTQ people scapegoats and to use them as political pawns in order to advance his career. In 2021, he enacted this bill and signed this bill into law that prohibited the ability of trans youth to be able to participate in team sports, throwing them off of their team, humiliating them in front of their community and their peers. It was mean-spirited and it was wrong, and it was a solution in search of a problem that didn't exist. Since then, he has doubled down on this bigoted agenda. So as things transpired through this year, I wasn't surprised. I was certainly angered and disappointed. But that's why I think it's so important that we have people doing this work so that we can be on the front lines to continue to speak out against it as only we queer people can.
Well, as I said, we're going to be following this in the next 6 days extremely closely. We remind our viewers, the reason House Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith's story is so interesting in this midterm election story in Florida is not only because of Governor DeSantis, but this is somebody who won their House seat 2 years ago by 9 points. And it was only because of the governor even overriding the GOP in Tallahassee to gerrymander the district in the way it did to basically change the prospects of how this House seat would be decided. And then on top of that, do things like what has happened in just the last couple of days of pouring $330,000 more in anti-Guillermo Smith television advertising in these last days. It's unprecedented what we're watching. And it's an interesting story of whether David defeats Goliath. And it'll be interesting to see how the LGBTQ community comes to the call of action of your words tonight. Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith, as I said, we'll be watching closely. It's a very interesting story. You are a very interesting story. And we thank you very much for your time at Queer News Tonight.
Thank you for having me, Al.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.